those who are new, I'll just give a very brief introduction to what we'll be discussing about. So we are talking about WhatsApp chatbots, and the presentation is hosted by Glific, which is a two-way communication platform for the NGOs to run their programs on WhatsApp. And today we have Digital Green, Erica Arya from Digital Green, who will be presenting how they've been using chatbots, what some of their learnings are, particularly in the domain of farming, because they're a farming and technology based organization, and they have a lot of experience in building chatbots. They've been trying and testing it out for a while now. So and they've been using Glyphic to run some of their programs, and that's why we have today to share how you can design the program, how you can test it, how you can deploy and launch it. Um, All right. So for some of the new folks, what you can take away from this session is, of course, how to think about using WhatsApp for your organization, for your programs. Um, how you can deploy it, and if there are some of the people who are already using chatbot, then they can take away some of the finer details, some tests, some learnings from their program on and apply it to their own context. So that was a very quick introduction to today's session. And now I hand it over to Erica to take it forward. And all yours, Erica.
Thanks, Abhishek. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking out the time to join us for this session, wherein I would be presenting the work that we have done in Digital Green with respect to chatbots and VoiceBot. We have been working with Glific on our VoiceBot use case. I hope this session is informative and proves to be of help to you. So feel free to ask in questions as we are progressing through the presentation. So I'll just share my screen, and I have my colleague Ridhima also on the call. So Ridhima, please feel free to chime in wherever required. Yeah. So let's get started. Just give me a minute. Okay. So I think I'll just give you a brief of the organization first, and then we can move on. So Digital Green is a global organization that empowers smallholder farmers to lift them out of poverty by giving them the right tools and by having on-ground partnerships. So we are working majorly in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. In India and Ethiopia are our focused countries. In India, we work in our focus states are Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa. These are the states where we work with the state livelihood missions and the Department of Agriculture. So what do we do at Digital Green? We basically empower our farmers with the use of technology, as I mentioned. So we have pico projectors using which we create localized videos with the help of the community and share the best practices on farming with the farmers. So we use the government extension system to take our message to the farmers using these pico projectors. We handhold the farmer throughout the cropping stage, and through our videos depict the right practices that they should follow from time to time, apply them in their fields, and which should be leading to an increase in yield and further leading to an increase in their incomes. So that's overall the work that we had been doing in Digital Green. And now we are moving more towards climate smart agriculture and market linkages. That's the upcoming work that we are doing. And since the organization is technology driven, we feel that using technology, you can, take your programs to scale. And that is why we started working on chatbots. So as you would have heard me say, we use PICO-based disseminations, and these screenings happen in person. But due to the pandemic, these in-person screenings got paused. So we had to change gears. We had to think about newer ways of reaching to the community. And when I talk about smallholder farmers, they are farmers, who are in the villages, who do not have access to many smartphones, and they're also not very digitally, obviously not digitally literate. So there are different challenges that we face when we are taking internet-based technology to them. But as we move forward, we can talk about how we have been handling those challenges. We're not able to reach out to 100% of the farmers, but through our digital solutions, probably we are able to reach to say 40 or 50% of those farmers, which is complementing our in-person facilitations that is happening on the ground. So with this, I'll just move on to the work focused on the chatbots. So as I mentioned, we were and we are doing the in-person screenings. These screenings with the farmers happen in a group setting. So there are like 10 to 15 farmers who come together. That this is, so as you know, agriculture is a very, seasonal kind of an activity. So it is clearly defined that, farmers would generally be sowing at this point in time. And this is the practice they would be following, say, after 2 weeks and so on, right? So based on the different geographies that we are working, we have a crop calendar created, because we know, again, agriculture is very much dependent on the geography. It's not that the same crop is growing everywhere in India, right? So based on the different states, we have a cropping calendar created. And based on that, the videos are shared with the extension systems who further screen these videos to the farmers in these group settings. So obviously, like we have any learning platform which is allowing for a group learning, your learning cannot be personalized. It cannot be targeted. You might be talking about things which are generic in nature, which would be sufficing the interests of majority in that group, but still there might be some deviations in terms of, or some variations as to when you would actually be doing those practices. So in agriculture, if you see, I am a farmer and say, Abhishek is another farmer. Now, while we both are growing the same crop, we are supposed to be doing the same practice at the same time, but there is an allowance of, a variation in the practices that I do versus what Abhishek does by say 2 to 3 weeks of time, right? So that's the variance that can happen. So when I am screening a video in person kind of a setting in a group, so what I am showing to my farmers today may not be relevant to all the 15 of them in that group, right? So that is when the need for this personalized kind of advisory, grew up. And we felt that we have been able to make a mark in reaching that scale and creating an impact on the ground with, a good set of farmers. But now probably it is time. We saw digital green, while we are showing these videos, what is the main indicator that we measure? It is adoption of what we are showing in our videos, adoption of those practices. So we felt that while the farmers were adopting 50% of our practices, we wanted to increase this number further. And one of the reasons we felt why adoption of practices was not that high was because, as I said, due to the variance we were working on in a more generic kind of a setting. So we felt now, with people adopting technology, and they being on WhatsApp, why not leverage this platform in sending personalized advisory to these farmers? And that is when we started thinking about, sharing advisories on WhatsApp. We first thought that should we create a WhatsApp group with these farmers? Because again, peer-to-peer learning is something which we feel really brings about that change. When a farmer sees his fellow farmer or a fellow farmer doing a particular practice and seeing its impact, the I think the receptiveness of bringing about that change, adopting that practice is very high, because you can see it, in front of your eyes, a farmer who's working in similar kind of climatic conditions and soil conditions. And so you can feel that, okay, even I can get to that kind of an yield. So peer-to-peer learning is what we really feel brings about a lot of change in the behavior and adoption of practices. So now we started thinking about WhatsApp groups. But as I said, when we were sharing these messages, it's like a cropping calendar made, and time to time you have to keep sharing these messages with the farmers. And there are different crops that we are targeting in a particular season and in different states. So now this could not be something that we could do manually, have people at different, states, just hooked on to WhatsApp. Okay, today you need to send this message in the group and tomorrow this other message. And then again, WhatsApp groups have a limitation. And here we are working with around 1.9 million farmers in India. So obviously this could not be a solution that we could, think of pursuing further. And then, since our interest was also reaching out in a personalized manner, giving targeted advisory, we thought that if our calendar is fixed, why can't we automate this? And that is when we started thinking about chatbots. And when we went down to the field, we did a lot of research on the ground to understand how our farmers are engaging with technology, what are the kind of applications they're using on their smartphones. And what we found was that WhatsApp was one of those applications which was there in almost all the farmers' phones, which, the smartphones that they had. And we found that they were generally using WhatsApp for, sharing of pictures, family photographs, trips that they had taken, but they were not using this platform for learning and sharing of the farming practices. And we felt that there was a gap there. But when we spoke to them that, if we start sharing these advisories onto your phone, do you think it's going to add value to you? And they said yes, because that would give them easy access to content. They would not have to attend those, those disseminations. And even if they were attending, this additional channel could complement their learning, could reinforce the learnings. They would have their videos on their phone, which they could refer back whenever they wanted. So then the ground was set for us, and we felt that let's just start off with, creating a bot for our farmers and sending them, which could enable, personalized and timely advisory sharing with them. Second thing, what we wanted to do was to build a feedback channel with our farmers, which we felt again the chatbot allowed us to do because it was all one-on-one communication. So this is the journey that we had, we've been working on, have been thinking and then working on different kind of chatbots since 2020. And so I think in the second half of 2020, we started piloting, we did some manual tests and in running these WhatsApp interactions with our farmers, because I think I'm just assuming that the participants in this session are hands-on with, the chatbots. They would understand, how much effort goes, the time and money that goes into building a bot. So obviously it does not make sense that you think of creating a chatbot and you start just building it. It's better that you test with your audience and do it in a manual way with a smaller sample, to see whether this new channel of learning resonates with your audience. And when you get some confidence in that is the time when you should start thinking about investing into developing of, bots. So that's the work that we did in 2020 with a small set of farmers. We tested using, the WhatsApp business. We created templates and, just tested the messaging and the response that we were getting from farmers. So that was something which was done in 2020, second half. And that gave us that confidence that, yes, we could see farmers responding. Farmers, we had some feedback calls also with them to understand, how was this new way of learning? Were they understanding the messages? And with that gave us confidence that, yes, we could think of investing some time and effort into doing this at a little bigger scale than the small sample that we were working with. So in 2021, we launched the chatbot for our farmers in Jharkhand, and this chatbot was focused on sharing advisory related to two crops that were growing in that season. I think it was wheat and mustard that that was the focus crops of those two in that state at that point. So that was something we did in February. We were working with 500 farmers, and the kind of response that we got, those initial findings, were very impressive and encouraged us, motivated us to scale up this bot in June 2021, where we were working with close to 3,000 farmers. So that's the scale up that we did. So this was now the bot, which was sharing again advisories with the farmers and measuring their adoption again through responses that we received from the farmer. And so that was what we did in June, and that is still continuing, and the bot ends in Jan this year. In April, we launched another bot. This was also a chat bot in Andhra Pradesh, and this was also focused on one particular crop of chili, wherein we were sharing time-to-time advisories with our farmers and also working on a pest advisory, which was inbuilt in that bot, because that particular pest infestation is found to be very high in that particular, in the chili crop. And when we did all these chatbots, one thing, why did we move to thinking about building a voice bot? It was because during our chatbot experiments, we learned that typing in the local language was a big challenge for the farmers. So we thought, let's just experiment, could voice work with our farmers? And this was the problem statement that we started off, that do farmers prefer engaging on WhatsApp using voice? So what we did was, again, this was a new piece that we were working with, never tested voice. We had some confidence on farmer interaction, on chatbots, which were like, giving inputs in terms of, 1, 2, or very small words like yes, no, why, and those were the kind of responses we had built in for our chatbots. Now we were seeing that those chatbots, because typing was a challenge, we could not expect farmers to be very expressive, and we were losing on information in this manner. It was becoming very closed. You have to type exactly the same keywords that the message is wanting you to do as you've trained your bot. But so it was becoming very restrictive. That's what we thought, that bringing in voice might probably help, because it gives them the freedom to say whatever they want to do. And to, especially when you are wanting a descriptive kind of response, so that works really well. But this is what we wanted to test. There was a challenge, like, would they know how to use the voice note feature in the WhatsApp, right? So that was another concern. We felt that there would be that kind of learning that we would have to impart to our farmers. But again, at Digital Green, whenever we work, though we start small, but scale is always there at the back of our minds. So anything that cannot be scaled, gets difficult for us to test. So while we start small, but that question always is there, guiding us, leading us into whatever, innovation or steps we take during our experiments. So we created, because of our good experience on working on chatbot designs, we quickly put down a design for this voice bot. The flow was quite similar to a chatbot. It's just that, instead of text responses or button responses, you were now expecting the farmer or wanting the farmer to respond to you using voice. So again, we did not know how voice would work. So we did again a manual test with close to 29 farmers. And we did again during this manual testing, we not only tried to test the flow, we were also testing the conversation, the visual assets that I will show you, to the later part of the presentation. It gave us a good opportunity to test that. We did feedback calls with those farmers, gathered, the qualitative aspects of what they were liking, where they were finding it difficult to interact with the system. And we tried to improve those things before we, in the solution, when we started off building the actual voice bot on the Glific platform with the help of the 𝐝𝐢𝐝𝐬 team. So what did we get to know from our manual testing? We found that voice was the preferred medium, and especially in certain scenarios, which I will also show you to the later part of this presentation, we tested different conversation formats, and just to see where voice was working better, where buttons were working better, whether text was being used at all when a farmer had an option to respond to these different ways. So we found that voice feature was used by majority of the farmers because we know that typing was difficult. Obviously, in the manual testing, buttons could not be tested, and hence they were like more hooked on to responding by voice. And so wherever we also shared, because as I mentioned, we were not sure whether they would know how to use the voice note feature that WhatsApp allows. So we shared, a GIF of how do you use the voice note feature, how do you put on the mic and you record and then you send. So that also helped them, learn about how to use the voice note. But it was also good to see that, in our feedback calls, when we checked with them that if they knew how to send voice notes, so it seemed that they were like aware of this feature and had been using it in their interactions with family and friends. Many questions we found, while we were, sharing messages with them, they were responding using voice. They were asking us questions. They were wanting advisory on other crops. We found that those questions were like descriptive. They were not like one or two words, which you would generally use when you are typing. So that voice gave them that freedom to, it felt more conversational, right? Because there was no such limitation. We felt that, another aspect that came out during that manual testing was farmers were wanting to learn, these new ways of, interaction. If farmer did not know, how to respond, they were taking help. And all this we got to know during our feedback calls with them. So as I said, this particular voice bot was focused on sharing advisory related to a particular pest infestation that happens in the chili crop, right? So now this is a very incidental kind of a use case. So we did not want that, at the end of, this pilot, we should be thinking, oh, the farmers did not face this particular pest and hence we could not test our voice, right? So that is also a learning that we got from this pilot, that whenever you are working on a use case which is incidental in nature, try to build in something which actually is like generic also, which most of the farmers would need, because that is when you are able to test that particular feature of your solution. So what we did was we built in weather advisory into our use case. And weather is something which is of prime importance to the farmers because that helps them define the activities that they would do on their field. So we found farmers mentioning that, weather advisories, sharing of weather advisories with them was very helpful. So that gave us confidence that yes, the time an effort we would invest in adding this additional bit of information to our chatbot service would really be a value add for the farmers. Farmers, regarding the technical issues that we faced, yes, because you are sharing the messages with them, they may not always be active as we are on the, in the urban areas, we are like hooked onto our WhatsApp, but that's now not how our farmers work, right? They would see the WhatsApp in the morning, they would go down to the fields, work, and whenever they are free, that is when they would access. So we had to also tune our messaging, the timing, the scheduling of our messages based on, what we learned from the field, that when farmers generally access their phones, are active on their WhatsApp. Because as we know that there are so many messages circulating, you're part of so many groups, you've got so many people on WhatsApp that, you want that your message should come on the top, right? So you need to really align your sending of messages as much as possible to the time when the user is active on the phone. And yes, there is a space issue that the farmers have. Since we were sharing videos, they would have to download those videos. So we had to ensure that any visual assets, the videos that we shared were not very heavy. And so that was one aspect that we had to take care when we were designing. So if you see, this manual testing really helped us, refine, redefine our solution, and we took care of all those things, and we launched the pilot with 500 farmers. That was the target that
Erica?
we had for this particular pilot. Yeah.
Hey, Erica, can we quickly pause for any questions? Like if somebody wants to have anything specific, maybe
Okay.
you are going to cover it, so we can say that it's coming, or otherwise we can answer them right now. So,
Okay, so yeah, we can. So I would, now go more into the, the particular voice bot use case.
sure.
So right now I think I've given you a good description of the work that we've done.
Yeah.
So I think we can let me just cover a couple of slides, and then could be that certain questions get answered in that. Is that okay, Abhishek?
Yeah, okay, sure. No, I was just wondering, like maybe in case somebody has anything specific, maybe
Sure,
Sanjay, if you want to ask anything
yeah, we
specific,
can. Yeah.
then
Please.
please feel free to unmute or type in your question, and then we can have resume.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone has any question till now, you can please feel
On
free.
anything, on chatbot, on so far what Erica discussed,
Yeah.
or anything, any questions you have, please let us know. Okay, I think you're good to go ahead. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Abhishek, for that. So now quickly, I'll just, we'll go deeper into the audio bot that we did with Glific. So this was like the design of our flow. It was more focused on, as I mentioned, understanding, sharing advisories related to, a pest infestation, which is known by the name of leaf curl, which happens in the chili crop. So overall, if you see farmers, pest infestation is a very big issue that they see in their crops, and they need support in that. And that is why we felt, let's target, this particular bot for just addressing one specific pest infestation that happens in the crop. Now, when I also mentioned to you in the beginning that the power of chatbots is to give you timely, targeted advisory. Now, to give you that targeted advisory, we need to get some inputs from the farmers. Now, and when I spoke about the digital green approach, it was more of face-to-face communication that we were having with them till now. So there was nothing like phone number collection that we were doing. So we didn't have, though we are working with 1.9 million farmers, but we do not have phone numbers of any farmers, because till now, all our work had been in the traditional way of, in-person interactions with the farmers. So that was a big challenge that we faced. We did not know, whom to take our service to. We didn't have phone numbers. So we used different ways of onboarding farmers onto our service. We used different channels like IVR. We used our government extension system to onboard farmers. We used Facebook. We used, newspaper ads. So I'm talking about these different channels we've been trying across our different bots. I'm not talking specifically for the voice bot, but across the different bots. So we can, if anyone has any question on that, we can also take that up later, because we've tried these different channels, what has worked for us. That'll also be something that you might be interested in knowing. So just coming back to this voice bot, so it was focused on this pest issue. So we asked the farmers, the first question when the farmer onboarded onto the service was, are you facing, this issue in your crop? And since this, as I said, it's a common issue, so we were expecting that 50 to 60% of our farmers would be facing, who are growing chili, would be facing this issue, and hence we felt this was a good use case to test our voice feature. So once the farmer responds that yes, I'm facing this issue, we would ask them like, okay, what is your crop stage? Because the advisory related to whether it is the curative advisory that you would share with your farmer is very much dependent on the stage of this crop, because this pest infestation reoccurs in the crop, and there is a different advisory that you give as the stage of your crop changes, right? So these were the two initial inputs we needed from the farmers. Once we had this, entire crop calendar or advisory calendar got created for that farmer. So if the farmer said, yes, I was facing leaf curl symptoms, I knew what her crop stage was. I knew that, whether she needs to be directed to the curative flow or the preventive flow of the bot. And as I mentioned, this is an incidental kind of, and obviously pest infestation is incidental. So we built in weather information so that it could attract more farmers onto the service. And we knew that weather is something which is very, very important to our farmers. So we were also asking them that, are you interested in receiving weather advisory? At no point we were like pushing messages to them, thinking that, oh, we feel that you need weather advisory. It was pull based till this point. Once they said, yes, I need weather advisory, then every week we were sharing a weather forecast with them. That was the push that we were doing. So this bot was pull as well as push. So pulling to the extent as what minimal information you need to build that, calendar for that particular farmer to push messages. That is what we were, doing. So one has to do that bit very mindfully, because if you're asking too many things to your user, the user may lose interest. So you need to maintain that balance. And then, as I mentioned, it's not just consumption of content. We want to measure the impact of our content. And that is why we were checking on adoption. So if I have shown a particular practice in my video, I am going to check with my farmer that, okay, are you willing to adopt, or have you adopted this practice? And giving her the option to respond. So that is how we were measuring the success of our bot also. And if a farmer did not respond to, the first question, obviously she did not move to the next question, because that was mandatory for us to know. So we left the farmer with the option that anytime she could click the button and choose leaf curl symptoms or weather, whatever she wanted. So she had a way to come back to the flow, if she was not interested in that at that point in time. So now this is how, the funnel worked for us. We started off with 200 users. The first stage that we had was asking the farmers that, okay, are you seeing the symptoms of the pest in your crop? We found that 70% of the farmers, responded to this query. The next question was okay, tell me your stage. We found that this was very high. This was higher than the first question, because, so one reason when we were thinking, okay, why did this become high? Because if you see, the first question was something that I was interested in. I gave you a response to it. And the second question just came in response to the response that I gave to the system. And the farmer felt that, yes, this is, making sense, and it might lead me to something which will be beneficial for me. And that is why, this is how we interpreted this. And we felt that, okay, if the farmer really sees value in the questions that you're asking, in the service that you're providing, It might take time, but they will adopt that. You will see that engagement happening. When it came down to the village name for which was needed to share the weather advisory, we saw again a very high percentage of people responding, because this, as I mentioned, weather is a very important feature or an information that the farmers want. So we were expecting this to be high among our farmers. And then the adoption query was where you had shared practices and you wanted to know if they were adopting those practices. So overall, what we've seen, and as you can see in the funnel also, you started off with 70% and then you came down to like, or you can say 139 users started off, and then you've just landed up with 36 people responding to your adoption question. Now, because adoption question was nothing, it was not a mandatory question that we were telling the farmer that you would not reach the next stage till you respond, right? So it would be good for them to respond, but if they are not responding, then also that's okay. So you see how the response rate was dropping, and that we've seen across our different bots. Initially, it is very high, and then gradually it goes down. So we have to learn, of ways of, engaging our users with our content, with appreciating them. Those are the different kind of, ways that you have to build into your flow. So now we will focus on, how the farmers were giving their response, because this is a voice bot. We had voice, we had buttons, and text was always there. So we were trying to see how farmers were responding, because if you see, the problem statement was that do farmers find voice a preferred way of, responding? That was what we were testing. And so we now started analyzing each of these different points where we were expecting an interaction with the farmer of, getting into the depth of how they were responding. So the first question which came on asking that, are you seeing leaf curl symptoms? So how did we design our flow? When I'm talking about voice, buttons, obviously all of these options were not shared with the farmer in one go. So we defined it in two different slots. So initially, any question that we shared with our farmer was in voice. We were asking the farmer to respond in voice. And we felt that even the question that we shared with the farmer should be in voice. Because if we want them to adopt a particular style of responding, we should also be asking them in that same format. So we started, sending our messages in audio form, and we were asking them to, respond in a similar fashion. Now, if the farmer did not respond, then after 7 to 8 hours, we were reminding the farmer about sending us a response by sharing the same question in a text format with button options. Now, as we know, WhatsApp, the messages, it gives us if you have 3 options, you use the buttons. So most of our responses were like not more than 3, and hence we could experiment with buttons. And so when we asked a farmer, are you seeing leaf curl symptoms? We gave them button options, yes and no, but that came 7 to 8 hours after we had shared with them the first question, wherein we were wanting the response to come in audio. And we saw that 25% of those farmers responded using audio and 75% used buttons. So then we realized that, okay, this was an observation that when your questions are simple, in a binary format, probably buttons are, easier to respond in, they're more intuitive, and, than pressing on that mic button and recording. So that was one observation we had. When we asked them, okay, what is your crop stage? Now, here stage was like defined in, longer sentences, which they had to choose and respond to. So there were 3 stages. The stages were mentioned on the button. And also, as we followed the same process, asking the same question first in voice, asking them to respond. And if they did not respond, then give them the button option. And what we found in the responses, what this had an almost equal or buttons doing, voice doing a little better in, the response that we got. So we see as we were moving to more descriptive kind of responses, voice was seemed to be working a little better. And So that's what you see, 48% people responding in voice versus 45 in buttons, and text, as you can see, was nowhere close to them. These were like those farmers who were like, so you have different cohorts of farmers, like some are young, some want to learn, some have people in the house to support them of how to use voice, how to use buttons and all, whereas some use the traditional ways and they did not respond even once using voice. But that sample was very small, so you can see 7% responded using text. Now when it came to asking them on adoption, we again had so for reporting adoption, users had only the button option, and we didn't have any voice option. So obviously that is why you do not see that split in voice and buttons here. So most of the people, they responded. As you can see, 97% responded to this query. And if a person said that, no, I've not adopted a practice, we were asking, okay, what were the reasons? And we found like 3 out of those 2 chose voice to share their reason, because again, you see the reason gets a little descriptive in nature. So that's what we were doing. On the weather query, where we were asking them to share the village name, again, village is something, you were across different villages, so you could not put it in buttons. So we just left it like use voice and say, or you can use text. Typing is again a challenge because the names are different. So you can see it as 72% people responded using voice and 28% using text. That's how they respond. So this is like overall whatever I have covered, the different ways that we were getting the responses. These are the different percentages which I've already covered in my slide. So whenever you get more descriptive in nature, we found voice to be working better. Otherwise, buttons were doing quite well. Now, I would like to just walk you through quickly a couple of slides which are talking more about just stitching these different things together of how the visual assets, what were the different onboarding ways that we tested. So 165 users joined through our WhatsApp. So using our program teams at the state level, we were promoting this bot, and we found most of the users joining through the WhatsApp channel, coming through those WhatsApp groups where this was promoted, and very few were joining through IVR. And as I said, we didn't have numbers, but we collected those numbers from the field when we made these IVR calls. We had very low conversion in Andhra Pradesh, especially. But when we worked this in Jharkhand, we found that IVR has worked better for us. And as I mentioned, you have to see when your users are active. So these are the popular times of the day when we found the farmers interacting with the bot. So you see early morning, we have 7 to 8, and then again in the evening, 6 to 7. So this helped us in scheduling our messages. Also, as I mentioned, we were sending the messages in 2 different slots. So one was going in the morning and one in the evening. So this was quite in sync when the farmers are generally active on their phones. These were a couple of visual assets that we use. So I think this is very important when you are designing chatbots, because your conversations need to be engaging. And you need to bring in some color into your conversation. So this is how we designed. We spoke about leaf curl symptoms. These are 2 different ways. This is the black screen in between. In the middle, you can see this is how we were sharing the weather advisory. We were appreciating our farmers using these different emojis. So this is how we were trying to build engagement. This is how we were like promoting our bot onto using WhatsApp. So this is like something that you can see how we were like promoting on different channels. These were like images which we received on our chatbot. Farmers love sharing pictures. And since this was like talking about pest, you can see farmers actually taking that effort to click pictures and share with us. Quickly, learnings, many of them I've already covered as I was walking through. So if your theme is very incidental in nature, then it's better that you build in, it's a good strategy to build in something which is cross-cutting like we did, having weather integrated into our flow. We saw that when farmers see a direct benefit, from the information they are getting, they generally engage. It takes time. You need to be patient, but it will happen. You need to just work on your messaging, hit that right spot, understand what your users need. So that's very important. We found that voice was a preferred way of responding to messages, especially in certain kind of messages which were more descriptive in nature. Typing, we knew was a problem, and that was again proven in this pilot. Farmers, we found that who responded to voice initially, they continued to respond to voice. And farmers who were unsuccessful, even after multiple attempts, they tried to prefer using buttons. So that was something that we found. Another thing that we saw was that initially when farmers were onboarding onto the service, we were bombarding the farmer with like a lot of messages. And that is why we saw that why farmers were not responding. And that's a tweak that we made into the flow. And we reduced our initial onboarding messages, because if you're sending too many things right at the same time, the farmer will lose on those messages and the information that you are sharing. When you're using your designing your ad campaigns, be very specific of what is your offering, because while I showed you just one picture of the campaign, we tried different formats, and we felt that when our messaging was very direct and very close to what the farmer was wanting, it really worked. Choice of keywords, we generally all use high as a keyword to onboard the farmers, but then it gets tricky because this is a word which the farmer generally uses. So what would happen that if in between the flow the farmer would say hi, the flow would start. So you have to be very careful of the words that you use to actually trigger your bot. And then the next is like one of the reasons that reported by farmers why they were not responding were that they were busy. And so it is a good practice that if you want farmers to start responding, have reminders built into your flow, say after 3 to 4 days. Do not do over messaging, but do keep this aspect in mind that they might be busy, and hence an additional nudge is not bad to do. So again, schedule the messages when your users are active. IVR did not work all that well for us. And yes, we feel that there is not, one solution that fits all. And hence, you have try to have a hybrid way of accepting responses like button, text, and voice. And that is what, in Digital Green, we would be doing in our upcoming bots. We would be allowing our farmers, because we've tested buttons, we've tested voice, and we know that, farmers use them. So depending on what kind of response we are wanting, if it is descriptive, we will work on, getting response using voice. If it is binary format, then buttons would be the best to go with. So in our next bot, you will get to see hybrid kind of, ways of getting response from the farmers. So yes, thank you. I think I've taken a lot of time, and we still have 10 minutes to go. So now I can open up for questions. And if, even after this session, you want to reach out to me, you can please write to me at erica@digitalgreen.org. Yeah, Abhishek.
Yes, Erica, a question came in. Can you throw some light on right time for sending messages, like you had explained? So if you could share a bit more about.
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned that, if you want your messages to reach to your audience, and so you have to know when they are actually using that handset, because that's a challenge, because you do not have anyone, mediating in between to tell them that, okay, there's a message which has come. So you have to see when your users are generally using the phones. So in our case, because we had our program teams in the states where we were launching these bots, and we have been working in those geographies for years, we very that it was being fed from, that experience, that generally, we see that this is the routine of our farmers. They access their phones in the morning, then they go out, work a couple of hours in their field, and they leave their phones at home. They do not carry it because they're working with water. The phone might fall off while working in the field. So, and generally when they come back during the lunch or in the evening, when they are like done with their work, that's the time when they are generally free. So that is what, when we built in these messages, we had 2 slots defined for sending the messages. One was morning slot. I think it was between 6 to 8 when we would schedule these messages. And the second slot was the evening slot. So as I mentioned, evening slot was around, I think, 5 to 7 p.m. So these were the two slots that we had defined. So if I was sending a message in the morning and I was expecting a response, and say the response did not come through, then I would send a reminder of that response in the evening slot. So, and as you saw in that graph that I showed, this was very well resonating also with the response times, that the farmers were giving. Because if you're asking a question, obviously if the farmer is active, then he's responding. So you could see that from this graph also. So I think that's important to know when your users are there.
Just to follow up, Erica, on that, like, is this some kind of fixed pattern or a good estimate, or does everybody have to figure out their own good times for their audience? Like, any thoughts on that, if possible?
I'm sure, like, see, in the urban sector, I think, like, if we consider users like us, I think we are all the time on it. We use it very frequently, because for our learning purposes, because many of our official things also happen on the chat. So we are quite active on it. But I think that I'm sure there would be like a best time for every kind of a target audience that you're working with. You need to be just more, you need to analyze your data, I think. And one of the ways I feel is that, why don't you put in questions, like, one or two, like just ask feedback, try to see, when are you getting responses? That could be one. This is like when you are asking them for response. Second could be like, okay, generally you see conversations happening. If you are seeing conversations happening, which are happening on their own, just try to see what are the timings of that. That will indicate to you, when your audience, or when your users are generally active. So I think these small nuances taken care of can give you an idea of when your users are onto the service, or onto the platform. If you're using WhatsApp as a platform, then that can indicate. And then you can try that. Or you could do like a couple of calls. And if you are there on the field, why don't you just discuss with them? Just try to not asking them, okay, when you just, generally how in Digital Green we do not go with direct questions, right? It's just that you try to understand their daily routine, ask them those kind of questions, so that these answers just come in those discussions, and then you are able to infer, right? Just try, okay, when do you use your phone? What do you use your phone for? Okay, now coming if WhatsApp. Okay, now coming to WhatsApp. How many times do you access your WhatsApp? Generally, what time of the day? Or like, is it morning, afternoon, evening? You can just go a little generic, and then just match it to the routine that they have. I think that's a very good way of getting to know your user.
Awesome. There's one more question, Erica. Can you share more about the marketing channels you explored, like newspaper, Facebook, to spread the...
Sure.
That's correct, Shrija? Or...
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. So recently, under the chatbots that we've run in Andhra Pradesh and in Jharkhand, we were like facing a lot of issue with onboarding. So initial pilots or use cases that we did, the first in Jharkhand, we just focused on WhatsApp groups, and we used our extension system. So as we're working closely with our partners, for us, what has worked the best is using that channel, using our partners in, spreading that word in the field and encouraging the farmers through the extension system to use this service. So that's one that has worked. Now, coming to the other channels, I think for us, Facebook has really worked well in Andhra Pradesh. So you also, again, you see how Andhra Pradesh has worked with Jharkhand. Andhra Pradesh, the farmers are quite progressive. Their adoption and use of smartphones is very high as compared to the farmers in Jharkhand as well as in Bihar. where we are working. So for Andhra Pradesh, Facebook gave us like 46% of the users that we have on our service, which is like around 5,500 farmers onto the chatbot in AP. 46% of them have come through Facebook. This Facebook did not work that well in Jharkhand, which we knew because, you know, the adoption of technology and use of these social platforms is not that great with the farmers in Jharkhand. We took out newspaper ad in Andhra Pradesh, and one particular day, over a period of 3 days from when we took out that ad, it gave us like close to 300 to 400 users joining in, which is good. Then we used posters, right? Posters, we printed them, we you know, put it up in the villages where we were working. And what we've seen, these posters have constantly been giving us, you know, 20 to 25 new users every day. So even towards the end, when we are closing the bot in the last month, we've been able to get around 400 users onto our platform. So I think that has also worked. IVR, while it worked well in Jharkhand, it did not work good in Andhra Pradesh. So we used IVR also. I would just say that whichever channel, you know, another thing why Facebook worked, because if you see the connection between Facebook and WhatsApp is so seamless, right? Which you do not see happening in the case of IVR, right? There are two different channels. A user, when he's giving a consent on IVR, yes, I want to opt in for this service, you know, then that number is being shared to your system, and then a ping is going on WhatsApp. Now this user, it gets difficult for her to connect that, oh, this is in response to the IVR message that I gave my consent to. So you see that there is that break happening in these two channels. So, and I'm just talking especially for our kind of users, the farmers who are not all that literate, and hence these joining the dots is not all that easy for them. Right? But for your kind of users, if they are urban and if you feel that, yes, I as a user can connect those different channels, then it might work for you. It did not work for us that well. So I think these are the different channels that we've used so far. And yeah, so we plan that in case of AP, we would always go with Facebook. We would always go with our partners, because they really help get users onto the service. And yeah, posters, I think print media also works well. So that's there for, yeah.
Erika, do you have time for some more questions? Okay, please go ahead, Krishna and Shankar.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you so much for the session, Erika. So I have a couple of questions actually. So one, as you said, like you are collecting certain amount of information from farmers, like you are encouraging them to share voice notes with you. But generally, when there's a text that is being sent or when there are buttons being used, it's very easy at the back end to track like, hey, what they have exactly responded, and the analysis gets really, really easy. Yeah. But when there's a voice note being like sent, so like if you are planning to scale up, like say 2,000, like 10,000 farmers in future, I don't know like what's the number that you're working right now, but like in case you're working with say 10,000 farmers, around even if like 20%, like 2,000 farmers are responding each single day. So how do you actually what do I say? How do you actually understand what they have sent, and how do you analyze it and like reply back to them? Because of course there are certain things which you are expecting to reply also, like, yeah. And there's a 24-hour window session, a limit for you to respond. So how do you manage everything?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the question. So I missed on mentioning here that when we were doing this voice bot, there was a speech to text integration that we had done with the Nirvana Technologies. That's another partner in this voice bot work that we did with Glific. So in the end, what happens is even when the user is giving a response in an audio form, now that audio is getting converted into text, right? And now that text is now being received by the Glific system. and the action is happening. So if you see at the end, even if it is an audio which is coming, if it is a valid response that we are getting, it is ultimately getting converted into text. And hence it is getting, easy for us to even measure that. That is why we are able to say like how many people, gave response to whether, whether they were interested in weather using voice. What was the village name that they said? Because at the end, that audio was getting converted into text and action was happening, right? Even when you had yes and no buttons, as I mentioned, the first step was we were asking them to respond using voice, right? So if I am asking them, are you seeing leaf curl symptoms? So record yes if you are seeing it and no if you are not seeing it. Now, if the farmer is recording yes and giving me, now that goes into a conversion. That gets converted into text. And then we send that to the Glific system. They see that, oh, we've received a yes. So now that will be handled in a similar way as the user would have pressed the yes button, right? So that is how that conversion is happening, and hence it is easy for us to track. And that is why we're able to say how many said yes, how many said no. So that's not an issue when the speech to text is like closely aligned with the responses that you are expecting.
Great. And are you like, and I'm assuming that there would be farmers who would be asking certain questions. For example, like if you are providing, like if you have asked like, hey, do you want to know about weather? And farmer has said yes, and farmer has sent another voice note say, hey, I have this XYZ problem in my chili farm, like in a chili crop. So do you have a system to reply back to their queries as well? And like if at all, like in a probably you'll be doing it through voice note itself. So are you having a system like there are a set of backend people who will be responding to their queries? Do you have a system of that sort?
Okay, so right now we do not have that, right? So as I mentioned, this is like a small pilot we were working on. We need to build in that database of responses, and over a period of time we will understand generally what are the kind of responses, queries that we get from our farmers, and probably we will train our bot to answer them. That is why you see when there was a point where we were asking like, have you adopted the practice, yes and no. So when we started off with the bot, the first bot that we had, we were just stopping here. Okay, if the farmer is saying no, we stop. And then what we used to do, we used to make a call to the farmer to understand, why did you not adopt the practice? Now we had some intel from that, right? Because of our past experience of generally why people don't adopt a practice. So when we were doing this voice bot, we built in those top three, gave in those top 3 reasons why farmers were not responding, so that it helped us gather information from the bot itself, as to what could be the most probable reasons. So that's something that we are refining, we are building with the data that is getting collected. So hopefully in the bots that we do, because as you mentioned, yes, scale is always there, but we know if we have that data that we will build over a period of time, we can really improve that.
Yeah. Erika, sorry, I'll just take 1 more minute of yours. So I just have a follow-up question on that. So in the chatbot right now, like we use buttons immensely in our chatbot. So like there's a logic that you can set. Like if a kid clicks on yes, certain message is being sent. Like hey, very good is being sent. If a kid clicks on no, oh, so sad, something of that sort is being sent. So that's the logic that we define when we have a button system. But when you are using voice notes, so and as you said, like a speech to text transformation, so is it on a runtime basis? So like immediately, like once somebody sent a no through a voice chat, immediately the response would come for oh no.
Yes.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yes, that's at runtime.
And that's lovely.
If you want to add something on this integration or how, because we've like integrated the Vana tech system with the Glific system. So if you want to add anything on, is there any latency? We've not seen that. So it happens all at runtime.
Yeah, no, I think from the Yeah, programmatic perspective, it's good. I mean, at the back end, that's the back end. But from the program perspective, if you haven't seen it and if it's working smoothly for you, then I think that's all that matters.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. And Arika, sorry, one last question. I wouldn't take more than half a minute. So in one of your, like when you are summarizing the chatbot, so you have mentioned that one of the problems that might occur is like when you send multiple messages, it might overwhelm the farmers. So, but like there are certain times when you have to send certain number of messages. So is there something where you have kept like a time gap between a message to message, like yeah, after 5 seconds the next message would go? Like I don't know, Abhishek, you can also add some, if there's some feature, we would love to use that.
Okay, so this is interesting. So 5 seconds on the WhatsApp is, I think, a big time, right? Because you're just leave, so you can't.
Or sometimes like one of the problems which we face is like if you are sending 3 messages, the sequence gets shuffled. Like the first message goes like a next, and like kids can't make sense of like what exactly is happening. So like, do you face that problem?
So we've not faced this problem, like, as I mentioned, 5 messages going together. We've not faced the problem of, messages going, not in the right order. But, I'll just give you an example. And generally more bombardment of messages happens when the user comes on board, because we want to tell her so much. We are this organization. This is what we are trying to help you with. You will find a lot of value. We will share a video, right, to make it more engaging. And then we will come to the question, okay, now can you tell me this, right? Now, so there is so much of messaging happening. Now, what we did was, so we were also describing, oh, we are digital green. This is the work that we are doing. This chatbot will help you achieve this. Then we felt that, okay, when the user is coming on board, user has some idea, because she has clicked that link, given you a consent, right? So she has some idea of why she's coming here, right? Now, if I first of all start talking about I'm digital green, can that information not come after a little while? Like after a couple of messages have been exchanged? Is it not important for me to first talk to her about what this bot will help her with? Probably she has some idea about that also, because that is why she's opted for this service, right? So we have to be like, we have to think about those things, because the general, intent, what we will follow is that, oh, let's introduce ourselves first, right? But you have to think from the user's perspective. Does the user want to know about digital green first, or does she want to know about her chili crop first, right? So that's what juggling we did. We were sharing a text message, then we were sharing a video on digital green if you want to know more, and then we were talking about other stuff. And so we felt that no, we can, and either a message can be like very crisp, or you can like think that, I can just place this message a little down in the flow. It is also a good means to engage with the user. The user has access to your service, and now you're talking about yourself that, okay, you've been receiving our messages. If you want to know more about us, then you can watch this video, right? So that's how you have to like think. And because, you can't give 2 seconds, 3 seconds between each of those messages. User does not know that there's more coming, right? User within one second, if she's not liking that message, she will just move on to, another chat, and we don't want to lose that.
Sure.
So
yeah, thank you so much, Arika, for that.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Erika. Actually, I have some questions regarding the flow, whichever you have shown that. I belong to AP, so I can understand what is written in Telugu in that flow.
Okay.
So, so the weather types, whatever are written, like those weather types, is that shown from any other website, or is it shown is it shown originally in the flow? Like that picture, I have a little doubt about.
Yeah, so we scrapped, so that particular weather could be a template, but how we were sharing the weather advisory was sourcing it from 𝐲𝐝𝐼 website. And we were like, every week we would create, we knew what the villages where we were working with, in. And so we would create the weather forecast that was available on that website.
Yeah, so if the farmer uses the chatbot, for example, like he gets the questions right initially, like what is there any issue in your leaves, and like is there any leaf folding, all that kind of questions come, right? So like, do the farmers send the pictures, or is the picture sent by the bot?
Okay, so the initial, the picture that I showed was something which we were sharing. And the reason for, so we were doing both things. We were putting in text the symptoms, how the farmer could identify this issue in her crop. And at the same time, we were also sharing these pictures so as to make it more visually appealing and helping her to understand. That was what we were doing. So it was both text as well as images. And then there was another screen where I was showing you different images. They were like received from the farmer. So at times when we were asking, are you seeing leaf curl symptoms? We were giving a yes and no button, but we were getting a response in the form of an image. Now that was not handled in our case, but that is a learning that we got, that sometimes farmers just want to show a picture of their crop and tell you that this is the problem that I'm facing and this is the severity of the problem, right? So
yeah, initially, like, just a minute, please. Like, initially, while sending the question, like, if did you get any leaf curl or not, and yes or no, while sending it, like, will the bot send the pictures initially before the farmer sends it, like, just for example purposes?
Yes, absolutely. So if I can just let me just share my screen once again, and so that I can tell you what was it that the bot was sharing. Sorry, just go to the appendix here. So if you see in this slide, the left 1, 2, 3, 4, and even on the right, this is an image which was shared by the bot. So if you can read, you see that these are symptoms. So
yeah, I can read it. Yeah, yellowish green leaves, it is written.
Yeah, so this was shared as an image as well as in text message also was shared, because you see people would, at the village, people may not download an image, right? So that is also what you have to see, while it looks good, it looks very colorful and engaging, but there is an extra step that the user needs to take by clicking on that picture to actually see what's there. That is why we supplemented that with a text message also, which had similar information writing these symptoms. And now coming here, now these are the pictures which were shared by the farmers.
Understood right now. Like whatever pictures are shared by the farmers, like it can either contain the pesticides, either the pests, or it can contain any other issues in the soil, anything it can contain, right?
Absolutely. You cannot stop that. And generally, the farmers, they love sharing pictures of their crop. If the crop is doing well, they really, like sharing those pictures, whether you ask them for it or not, you get them. So,
understood. Yeah. So one more question I want to ask you. So about the weather, whatever question which the bot asks, will it ask, will it give the options? Like, is it rainy, or is it hot, or is it drizzling? Will the bot give options by itself, or like should the farmer choose anything, or should the farmer speak?
Okay, so what we were doing in the bot was we were just asking the farmer that we have a weather service also. So would you like to receive this weekly weather forecast for your location? And we would give a yes and a no button, right? So if the farmer pressed yes, so we knew, then we would ask, okay, let us know what is your village name, because weather is like specific to his location, that we would be sharing, right? So that would be the next question that we would ask. And once we would get the village name, and that village name was in our list of villages for which we were supporting the weather service, then we would immediately send the weather forecast for that particular week. And then we would, like, every week, we know that these are users who are subscribed to our weather service. And every week we would be sharing, like we had fixed up a day, a Friday, as the day when the weather forecast for the next week would go. So that is how the weather template that you saw, that was being shared with the farmers. And in addition to that, if there was some extreme condition during that week, we were sharing an additional advisory with the farmer that while we had forecasted for this weather, but we see that this is like an extreme condition which is being seen in this particular week. So this is the extra precautions you need to take. And those extreme conditions were defined by our agri experts, and they were built into the system. Like say if temperature is above a particular degree or humidity is above a particular threshold, then this is an extreme condition for this particular crop, and hence the farmer needs to be supported with additional messaging. So that was also what was being shared with the farmer.
So if it is going to rain heavily on that day, like will the farmers get to know about it? Like if there is any thunder or anything which is going to come up?
So that would be there in the weather forecast. And as much, so before we integrated weather, we were observing how good the data that we were sourcing from 𝐝𝐤𝐝 website was, how authenticate that was. And we felt that the data was quite good. And that is when we integrated that into the system. But if it is raining very heavily, right, today, if the forecast is talking about it, it is there. If it is not an extreme condition for that particular crop as defined by our agri experts for that particular crop, we would not, again ping him that, oh, it's going to rain very heavily today. If it is not impacting the crop under those extreme, if it is not one of those two extreme conditions, we would not be sending any more messages in between the week that, oh, it's going to thunder today, or there will be heavy rainfall, right? So this was what we were doing right now.
Understood. So, so the farmers don't give any like weather update by themselves, right? Only the bot will give it to them, right?
Yeah. Only the bot was sharing the advisory. Yeah.
Sure. Understood. Thank you so much for your answers, whatever you have told till now. Like I was able to understand the bot. So like I will try and execute it like today.
Okay. Fine.
Not about executing, but I'll try and interact with the bot. That is the thing.
Yeah. So you would need the link to join the bot, right?
Yeah, I got the link already.
Oh, you got the link?
Yeah. You have shown it right in one of the pictures.
Oh, okay. So it's good, and good that you know Telugu, so you can access the bot.
Yeah.
And if anyone else also wants to access the bot, we have a Hindi bot also running, and that bot is available for the next 3-4 days. So we are happy for you to have access to that bot if you want to just see how the interactions are happening. There are like, I don't know how much sense it would make because they're all agri-related information, but if anyone needs that, I can share it with Abhishek and further share it. So it's there for 3-4 days.
Sure, Rika. Yeah, many people ask for Hindi and English flow, so we can send it to them. In case you want to create like a demo version to keep your data separate, then duplicate and...
I think that will again need effort to build. So, and since we are almost closing our bot, so I was thinking it's okay, even if we can decide like, today is 21st. So we will just work on the data till the 20th Jan. And after that, as it is, we are closing. So it's like, okay. So there, I think Ridhima has shared the bot number. Thanks, Ridhima. And so anyone who wants to check out our Hindi bot can do that.
Awesome. And in case some people left us, I'll send them a follow-up email.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Any other questions, anybody? Anyway. So, Krishna, is your question answered by Ridhima on the chat, or do you have anything else?
Actually, like it would be great if Erica can actually elaborate. So I was trying to ask, like, you send weather updates to the farmers, right? So like there might be say 10 villages that you would be working with. So 10 villages would be having like 10 different weather updates. So like, is it like, do you update it on a runtime basis using some API? Like, would it fetch from the like the current status? For example, if I'm from say Guntur and I'm interacting on a Monday, and if Abhishek is also from Guntur, he's interacting on Tuesday. So both of us would get the same screenshot that you updated, say, on a Sunday, or like, does it change on a runtime basis?
No. So we fixed the week. right?
Okay.
So every Friday we share, Thursday we update the sheet. So the weather forecast is from Friday to Thursday. So if Abhishek joins on Monday, you join on Wednesday, you both get the same message.
Sure. And it's updated at the back end. Like I was actually reading Ridhima's answer that it's updated using Python. So can you show some more light on that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just start here. Hey, hi Krishna. So basically what I meant was the Excel sheet that is like filled up on a weekly basis through the 𝐲𝐝𝐼 website, and then from the Excel there is a Python script written which generates the that template which Erica was showing, right? That is generated automatically through the Python script for all the villages.
Oh, got it. Yeah, thank you so much. And the Excel sheet is updated manually.
Yeah. That we do on a weekly basis. Every Thursday morning we do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
that's lovely.
The reason is because right now, it's just testing that we were doing, and there were very limited villages that we were like supporting. But yes, now if it has shown to be working, and when we scale, obviously we will do the API integration with 𝐲𝐼.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
All right. I think this is good. And thank you so much for overstaying and answering all the questions, Erica and Ridhima.
Thank you.
We can close this. And if there is anything else, you've shared your email ID so people can reach there and messages as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.